Hello there everybody, this is Graham, also known as the Collector75, and welcome back to part 9 of my Marvel UK Transformers G1 comic reviews. That is still getting quite a mouthful, so I'm probably going to have to change that. Anyway, for this part we are starting off with Target 2006, probably one of the most popular and iconic storylines from the UK issues. From roundabouts here, Marvel UK, well, Transformers UK, gained such a stature and had its own continuity, weaving in with all the US issues. And for the next 2 years, its popularity grew and grew and grew, and even outsold the leading UK comic, which of course, well, for boys anyway, was of course 2000 AD, which is still going. The only problem is in these days, obviously, comics in England are all aimed at 5-year-olds, so comics just over here just ain't even worth buying anymore. Apart from 2000 AD, which is the only one aimed at anyone over the age of 10, which is a bit annoying. But anyway, let's start off with these, because we're talking about these today. It's, of course, Target 2006. Now then, we have a great cover here with Going, Gone, with Prowl, Ratchet and Optimus Prime about to disappear into who knows where, and it's just got the title down here, A Shocking Fate of Optimus Prime. And we are September 1986. Oh yeah, just before I go on, most people, well, especially the American viewers, we didn't get Transformers the movie until December 1986. So we had no idea what was going to happen in Transformers the movie. So events in this will correlate that fact, and I shall point them out when I come to them. Anyway, so we open the page, we've got the usual transformation, and we've got a little bit about Transformers the movie that this story is actually connected to. There we go. So we got right, so we have Target 2006 prologue. This is of course because even though the movie is set in 2005, I think it's probably easy for them just to say that it was set in 2006, maybe just for then, it's rather than say 19 years they were jumping back, or 20 years, who knows, or either that or they just got it wrong, or got the wrong facts at the time, who knows. Anyway, doesn't matter. But we start off here, Optimus Prime going through the woods. He's a bit unhappy with what happened to the Dinobots in the last issue. And he just says, look, I just want to have a briefing chamber with all available Autobots in the Ark as soon as possible. And then we switch to Cybertron, where the first appearance of Emirate Zaron, with like the decimated Iacon, and all the resistance has now moved underground. And we have the first appearance of Impactor. Basically, they're setting up a plan to destroy some high-ranking Decepticons, but they need, Zaron is the bait, but they need to leak it to the Decepticons, so they basically give the information to a known Autobot person who is just going to give the information to the Decepticons. He does so, but then Shrapnel, is it Shrapnel? Yeah, Shrapnel decides to destroy him anyway. And there's Roadbuster, because also he fed the information to that Autobot. I think his name was Skater. And he says, well, you know, that's what you get for being a traitor. Anyway, we come back to Earth with Optimus Prime in his briefing room. And he's basically just saying, you know, blah, 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 about all the events so far on Earth. And then suddenly something shocking happens to him. They don't know what's happening. And suddenly he's just sort of disappearing in a weird, who knows what. Anyway, yeah, there we go. So he's just disappeared. And they don't know what's going on. There's Ironhide, Optimus, Prowl, Ratchet, oh no, no. And then on Cybertron, the Matrix Flame, the living embodiment of the sacred creation Matrix, housed in Prime's mind, flickers and dies. And then, elsewhere on Earth, the late afternoon stillness of an Oregon cereal farm is rent asunder, heralding an arrival. Now then, here we go. This is obviously Cyclonus, Scourge and Galvatron arriving in the past. There we have. Now then, these appearances here look exactly like they did from the toy line. This is because the artist didn't get any information of what they would look like in Transformers the movie, so he had to go off the toys. And then they did get it originally, and then they could have changed this, but then they thought, you know what, let's sod it, let's just run with it. Anyway, we've got an advert for Transformers the Annual that year, more Grimgrams, and Hercules. And the next issue, the apocalypse begins here in 7 days' time, with more Robo-Capers, and an advert for the new leaders. This, of course, advert didn't tell us that Galvatron was Megatron. So we move on to the next issue, which is number 79. With the new leaders are here, Ultra Magnus and Galvatron. Nice little cover that, I like that one. I remember I got this after school one day. And we move on to Target 2006 Part 1. Because of course the last episode was just the epilogue. So we should quick run through. Here we are with transformation and everything. Here's Cyclonus and Scourge destroying a train, showing how much their power is. And then basically they decide to announce their arrival to Megatron. At the same time, due to Optimus Prime's disappearance, the Autobots are just sort of like spying on the Decepticons because they believe them to be responsible for his disappearance. And then they witness this with Galvatron announcing his arrival to Megatron. Soundwave tries to scan his mind, but he can't because of the improvements made by Unicron. Megatron says, is he like Straxus from Cybertron? He says no. He says basically he is from the future. He is Decepticon leader in 2006. Megatron can't believe it. But Galvatron says, I just need the use of the Constructicons. But Megatron just blasts him and says, you must be a fool. Do you consider me a fool? All you will get from Megatron is death. And Cyclonus and Scourge pipe up, no, it's you who's going to die. But then Galvatron says, have you lost your minds? Megatron must not, cannot die. This was anticipated. We do it as planned. And so basically just beat them up and bury them under a cliff. There we go. And so Galvatron just rounds up all the Constructicons and heads off. And the Autobots don't know what's happening. They're just stunned. And then we go back to Cybertron with basically his Impactors not happy. Basically because Zaran wants to see him. And there's Ultra Magnus because now they, with the disappearance of the Matrix Flame, they must find out the fate of Optimus Prime. So they're going to send Ultra Magnus to Earth. Basically Impactor's unhappy because he wanted to use him in their secret plan that they're going to hatch. Anyway, we have more Grimgrams. An advert for Heinz, something to do with Halloween there. And there's Hercules. And more, and a little bit of a subscribe now. Anyway, so we move on to the next issue, which is, of course, number 80, with Ultra Magnus's arrival on Earth. Here we go. Oh, I hope my thing hasn't just moved there. It's a bit of a dodgy table, this. Anyway, so we go through the issue now then. Galvatron has already used the Constructicons to create something. We don't know what it is yet. And then we have two Autobots spying on them, Jazz and Hound. But Cyclonus has snuck up on them. He's about to hand them a good old beating. Just as the Ultra Magnus arrives on Earth. And he was just remembering a few events from Cybertron's past there, just a few moments ago. Just basically telling the Impactor's not happy about him going. So he's only got a limited time on Earth to find them before he needs to get back for this Operation Volcano, is what this secret operation is going to be called. Anyway, so we go through, Cyclonus saying about his origin to Hound there, and he says, well, you're going to have no such fate. But of course, Ultra Magnus intervenes, and Cyclonus can't believe it. Ultra Magnus on Earth, but then he realises it's the Ultra Magnus of this era and not 2006. But he says, anyway, I must alert Galvatron to your appearance on Earth at this time. So basically then Hound offers to take Ultra Magnus to the Ark. And Galvatron, you know, can't believe that Ultra Magnus is here, so he needs to preempt the Autobots into a strike. And he knows just how to do it. Here's Ultra Magnus having a conversation with Jetfire, because Jetfire has assumed temporary leadership of the Autobots, because he's the only one there. And basically, Ultra Magnus is trying to tell him that he's from Cybertron, but Jetfire sort of disbelieves him, he just happens to have turned up at the same time that Optimus Prime has disappeared. But anyway, then Galvatron contacts the Autobots and says, Autobots, I'm gravely disappointed you come to me and visit me unannounced, and then, just to add insult to injury, you leave something behind you. And then they, oh no, feel free to pop around and pick him up anytime. And there's Jazz being tortured. I do like that, it was really evil. I like that. But anyway, so we go on with Grimgrams. And then the next issue, and not an advert for Nostalgion Comics. I went there the other week and I went to Auto Assembly. Right, let's move on to number 81. Which just has the to be continued, because this was a bit of a gutter. I remember reading this thinking, oh my god, at the end. But anyway, this is just Ironhide going through events that have just happened in his mind of when the Autobots tried to attack Galvatron to force him, well, basically to hand over Jazz. That was it. Anyway, so we have it going there. Jetfire says, you know, we should do this. Ultra Magnus doesn't want them to. He says we need to concentrate on finding Optimus Prime. Blah, 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 so they attack. They think they're doing well because they beat up Scourge here. But as you can see, the Autobots attack Galvatron. And then he says, look around you, the Constructicons are there. They won't attack you. And there's Cyclonus and Scourge. You thought he'd destroy them, but they've just beaten up all the Autobots. They're just well hard. And then basically the Autobots attack Galvatron and can't do a thing to beat him. So then Galvatron just beats him up and says to Ironhide, you're not even worth the effort of a killing blow. Go back and crawl in whatever hole you came from. So Ironhide, once they all piss off basically, just decides to dig his own grave and digs up the bodies of Megatron and Soundwave. And then as an epilogue, we have Grapple in the Ark looking over some CR chambers. Because these are, of course, the deactivated Decepticons from Omega, when the Decepticons attacked Omega Supreme. And someone looks like they've just woken up. We have a nice fact file on Ultra Magnus. We're not going to have a fact file on Galvatron yet because, of course, his secret has not been revealed. And then we have Hercules and the next issue, as we're going to move, the events move just to Cybertron now. So we've got to wait a whole 2 weeks for that cliffhanger to be played out, which was really gutting. I hated that because obviously when you're a kid, time moves slower. Anyway, so we have a nice little cover here. We've got Meet the Wreckers. This is the first appearance mainly of the Wreckers, which is a nice artwork drawn here by Ron Smith. Mainly claim to fame is, of course, drawing 2000 AD. Judge Dredd. When I read this, I kept expecting Judge Dredd to burst in any minute and start making arrests. Anyway, so we have Wreck and Rule. This is just a sort of like a training session, going through some facsimile constructs, because these, of course, aren't the real Decepticons that they're destroying, just a training mission. We meet all the Wreckers, and we go through some fantastic artwork. I do love this. This issue is just basically about the because mainly the Wreckers are a mercenary unit attached to the Autobots that will basically just pick and choose their missions they want to do, and they think that now Operation Volcano has become, the risk is too high, so basically they're going to pull out. But then basically events sort of force them to reconsider and say, well, they're Autobots, you know, every mission's important, so they basically just decide to go along with it anyway. So yes, because without Ultra Magnus, a vital point to stop Decepticon reinforcements, they're all going to be slaughtered, basically. But they decide, you know what the hell, we're going to do it anyway, because we're hard as nails. So that was issue number 82. Right, so we're back with issue number 83. Here we go, it's a great cover. I loved this one when I was a kid. I remember I was ill at the time and I got this one. And it actually made me feel quite a lot better, actually, because it's just a great cover. It's just got Scourge is scrapped and not by an Autobot. And I got this one signed by Simon Furman and Andrew Wildman at, I think it was Transforce, or maybe an Auto Assembly, about 3 years ago. Anyway, so we're going to go in through the story, and we just have, he cannot believe what he has just seen. And it just has Starscream waking up in the CR chambers. He's noticed that Thundercracker and Frenzy are going to be revived any time soon. So he wanders off through the arc when he says he cannot believe what he's just seen. And it's Megatron and Soundwave leading the Autobots. And then it's just a conversation between Jetfire and Megatron, saying that Jetfire goes, you're here in an advisory capacity only. And Megatron says, well, you're not doing so good a good job. And he says, blah, blah, blah. And then they both turn around saying, well, you didn't fare too well either, because he buried a mountain under you. And so it basically just has Starscream saying that if there's this being that can unite sworn enemies against him, an alliance with him can't be a bad thing. And then Ultra Magnus, he can't believe it. Megatron teaming up with the Autobots, he says, you must be mad, Hound. Anyway, so then he explains to Hound that he's only got a certain amount of time before he's got to get back to Cybertron and Operation Volcano. But anyway, the Autobots are heading out with Megatron anyway. They manage to track down Scourge at a metal factory and attack him. Scourge can't believe that the Autobots are attacking him so soon after the beating that they handed them. So he assumes that someone has organised this rabble. The Autobots continue to attack him, and he flies sort of like a metal shard at Grapple, injuring him quite badly. He gets outside and is confronted by Megatron, who blasts him and says, and now, Slime, will see exactly how much your master believes your life is worth. And then we go back to where Galvatron is, and this is Jazz. He cannot believe what he has just heard. Galvatron has just told him about the Autobots' abortive attempt to rescue him. And he says, in the rage, frustration, it all boiled over. And he cannot remember the words he spat at the creature, something like, you're just like him, aren't you? Just like Megatron. Ha! Galvatron laughs. No, Jazz, not like Megatron. I am Megatron. And Jazz says he cannot believe what he has just heard, but he knows it is the truth. But anyway, so we go through, got more Robo-Capers, and we have a Cybertron, the middle years, and just explains what happened on Cybertron in between Megatron leaving and Straxus taking over. It goes on about that there was another Decepticon warlord called Trannis who took over, but then I think Straxus destroyed Trannis or something like that, I can't remember now. I'm not going to go into that too much, but we had Grimgrams, Hercules, and we have the next issue with the, Autobot triple changes, but they've got Decepticon signs there, we'll find out why in the next issue. So we head on to number 84 with the awesome origin of Galvatron, and where Galvatron's secret is revealed. And we have a great issue drawn by Jeff Senior here. Here's Impactor, and this is where they place the inhibitor claw on his back so he can't transform. And there we have the Autobot triple changes, but of course they have Decepticon signs just so they can attack him, and Impactor won't hold back when they're fighting him, and just so they can show Impactor that they're up to the job. Yeah, sorry, just making sure my camera hadn't gone funny then. Yep, just to make sure that they're up to the job, and that they will be a good stand-in for Ultra Magnus should he not make it back from Earth in time. And then we go back to Earth, where Galvatron is about to explain to Jazz what happened in the future, where he had a fight with Optimus Prime, was badly damaged, and then cast out into space by Starscream. Then he met Unicron, who reformatted him to Galvatron, and basically made Galvatron his slave. But he says, but here in 1986, I'm beyond even his reach, free to build a weapon of unimaginable power, this weapon. And then goes on to explain that the minute he returns to 2006, he's going to trigger the weapon and will destroy Unicron. But he says there's a reason why he's building it in this location, but we don't get to find out because he's interrupted by Cyclonus, who then tells him that Megatron has teamed up with the Autobots. And Jazz just starts laughing, says, that's rich, Megatron versus Megatron, ha ha ha. And then Galvatron just thumps him. Then we sort of head back to the eastern Wyoming, where the Decepticon base is, with Shockwave just come out of hiding. And he's just sort of found Thundercracker and Frenzy, who've just revived from the Ark. And then, meanwhile, in the future, we have 3 Autobots preparing to head back in time. And then as they sort of like trigger the device, Shockwave, Thundercracker and Frenzy all disappear, just like Optimus Prime did, giving us a hint of what's happened to them. And then, what was it? Then Cup, Hot Rod and Blur arrive in the past. And, of course, these Decepticons have now disappeared. And that's basically the end of the story. Well, sorry, that issue anyway, not the story, rather. We have Grimgrams, another advert for the annuals out that year. More Hercules. And the new recruit, which is, of course, Starscream. More Robo-Capers. And an advert of Dungeons and Dragons. And now we move on to number 85. Sorry about that. Which is just a nice little cover with Galvatron's Autobot Zombie. Right, so this issue, we have the destruction of the Decepticons' original ship, which brought them to Earth way back in issue number 1. This was a test fire of Galvatron's weapon, and he says as soon as it's recharged, we'll head back into the future and trigger the weapon. Now, then he has Starscream on his side now and says, at the prisoner exchange, it's important that no one knows that you've teamed up with us just yet. And then Cyclonus says, why are we pampering to that fool? And he says, well, the joke's on Starscream. He hopes to team up with us, thus assuring his position in the future. But thanks to us in the year 2006, he has no future. Anyway, so giving us a hint, of course, of what's going to happen in Transformers the movie. So we move on, where Ultra Magnus has now met the Autobots from the future. And basically go on to explain that someone travelling from the past, they have to lock on to 3 people in the past to basically like a mass substitute, and thus gives Ultra Magnus an idea of what's happened to Optimus Prime. And now back at the prisoner exchange, the Autobots are handing over Scourge in an exchange for Jazz. But just around the corner, Megatron has confronted Cyclonus, and Soundwave distracts him enough to Megatron to thump him. But of course, then they're attacked by Starscream, who's about to kill Megatron. This is the part where he figures out that he needs to confront Galvatron to force him to return to his own time, thus bringing back Optimus Prime and Ratchet and Prowl to our time, or our dimension rather. And then back at the prisoner exchange, Galvatron just says, look, I've just, you Autobots have a need for another lesson. And says, so basically that he just activates his device on Jazz, and he just starts remote controlling him and attacks and decimates all the Autobots. And then just as Starscream's about to kill Megatron, he intercedes and whacks him. And then he just says, so shall all fall, all who oppose me. Starscream has fallen, the Autobots have fallen, Megatron, Soundwave. Who will stop Galvatron now? And then this was just a great ending. It just says, I will, Ultra Magnus will stop you, Galvatron, or die trying. And you just think the crowd goes wild, all ready for this next issue. And here we go, more Grimgrams. Hercules. And we have the next issue, which is, of course, Galvatron versus Ultra Magnus. Oh, you guessed. There we go. So we move on to number 86 with Crunch Time. Let me just straighten this up. There we go. Galvatron versus Ultra Magnus. Another brilliantly drawn issue by Jeff Cena here. He's probably my favourite all-time Transformers artist. And we just says all the events that have been happening so far. There's the Autobot zombie Jazz. There's Megatron and Soundwave deactivated at the moment. And now it's just Galvatron versus Ultra Magnus. And basically all Ultra Magnus is trying to do is force Galvatron to return to his own time. But Galvatron's having none of it and literally just has a big fight. And this is like just a few past events from about a few moments ago. And that's it really. And all basically now the Autobots are going to destroy Galvatron's weapon because we find out that they are under the influence of Unicron. And blah blah blah. Galvatron blasts Ultra Magnus and is about to transform to cannon mode to finish him off. Jumps out the way, lands over there. Galvatron comes round for another attack, but he sees an oil tanker, picks it up, lobs it in the way of his blast, and kaboom! And suddenly there's all this fire, and you wonder who's survived. And of course Galvatron is, and he just throws Ultra Magnus's sort of deactivated carcass to the floor. And that was the end of that issue, just to show that Galvatron is hard as fucking nails, and we all love him. Anyway, that's Grim Grams. We got an advert for Silverman's back in Spider-Man and Zoids, number 36, more Robo Capers. And now a new backup strip, which I believe is Spitfire. Couldn't get into this either, so don't ask me what happened in that. And then we got Down and Out, as we head into the final parts of Target 2006. Now, this was the final part of Target 2006. The other part is just an epilogue. We just got lights, camera, action, and a big explosion. The Autobots are spray painting Skywarp to look like Starscream because they've got a plan that's going to send him back to the future. There's Galvatron with the beaten up Ultra Magnus. And now then, here we go, the Autobots. And there's Ultra Magnus thinking that he needs to distract Galvatron long enough for the Autobots' plan to come into effect. But he knows he hasn't got long before he needs to get back to Cybertron. That's just like a brief sort of like what's happened before for anyone who's just sort of like latched onto this story, first of all. Blah blah blah, not much happened here. The Autobots sort of like figure that they've got to attack Galvatron. And eventually it gets a bit mind-numbing really, because they keep attacking him, but Galvatron's just too powerful. And the Autobots just think of, you know what, sod it, let's just trigger the explosions anyway, because we're never going to get a better opportunity. They trigger the explosions. Galvatron's weapon is destroyed and he can't believe it. He's buried under a load of rubble, but then just gets up. And he's so angry and he can't believe it. But then what he sees, he thinks is Starscream. And he just says, I have mated Galvatron. Where's your superiority now, eh? I've destroyed your weapon. And he just says, Starscream, Starscream. And then he just blasts him, literally destroying Skywarp. But he does turn up later, so we don't know really what happens here. But anyway. But he knows now that he's destined to destroy Starscream in the year 2006. And what he believes now is that sometimes when you're returning, like time travelling, you have the chance of materialising in a dimension that is parallel to your own. And of course, when events will suddenly just change at a given point and creating loads of parallel universes. And this is, he now believes he has just returned to a parallel dimension. So he believes now that anything he accomplishes here will have no effect in his dimension. So he just decides to return to the future. And the three Autobots now wonder what to do with the real Starscream. And we shall see. Then we have a fact file on Galvatron. Of course, we had to wait till now because they didn't want to spoil the surprise that Galvatron is Megatron. We have Grim Grams, more Spitfire. And of course, the last part of Target 2006, which is just Operation Volcano. Oh, pardon me. Here we have Volcano erupts without Magnus. Maybe it doesn't matter. And here we have just Aftermath. There's Galvatron's destroyed weapon. This is Unicron. He's basically looking at events in the past. He's just summoned Galvatron to him, and he punishes him for his indiscretions of returning to the past. And he's also summoned back his three Autobots because they were under the mind thrall of him. He wipes their memories and returns them to Autobot City. And now then, at the time, at Galvatron's site, basically, where is it? I don't know if it's in that bit. Yeah, there it is. He just puts the thought in one Autobot's head of saying, this would be a good site for if the Autobots ever wanted to make a city on Earth, which is, of course, where Autobot City will be, which is why Galvatron decided to use that site, because when he returns to the future, his weapon would have been underneath Autobot City, so it would have destroyed Autobot City as the blast ripped through it, and destroying Unicron, so killing two birds with one stone. And that's basically it. It's just the end of the story. The Autobots sort of like lick their wounds and regroup. Ultra Magnus returns to the Cybertron eventually, but now this is Cybertron, and the Decepticons are prepared to fall into the Autobots' trap with the Impactors Wreckers. And there we go, just got Laserbeak digging out Megatron and Soundwave, and they head off, licking their wounds too. There's Ultra Magnus returning to Cybertron. Now and here all come the Decepticons falling into the Autobots' trap. And this is Macabre, who believes that, well, he's sort of like not a general on Cybertron. And basically then Megatron calls off the attack, and they can't believe it. Macabre can't handle it, and he thinks, oh, for fuck's sake. So he just decides to head off and destroy Zaran on his own. Back at the sort of like the Autobot meeting place, where it's just a trap really. Impactor tells Zaran that, you know, all the Decepticons have turned back, so it's been a waste of time. But Macabre is there waiting, and he takes a pot shot at Zaran, but Impactor pushes him out of the way, takes the blast himself, and then the Autobots just destroy Macabre. But of course, this is where Impactor receives his fatal blow and then dies. But of course, he does come back, as we'll see in about issue 160 odd. And this is it. Optimus Prime has now returned from the sort of like limbo dimension that he was in. Jazz is going to receive a lot of treatment, along with Grapple and Trailbreaker. Now then, Optimus Prime has received a wound from when he was in the limbo dimension, which we will find out what happened to him in issue number 100. But as we move on to the next issue, we have Aerial Bots over America. We have more Grimgrams, Spitfire and the Troubleshooters, and Skids is back. Because of course now he returns to the US strip after a break of that for nearly 3 months. Let's look at the cover date. We have the 22nd November. I believe that story started way back. Let me just check those issues. It's the start of September. It was the beginning of September. So there we go. That has been part 9 of my Transformers G1 comic reviews. I hope you all liked it, and we'll stick around for part 10, where I'll try and lead up to number 100. I'll see you all next time.